What is up, my friends? It is, what day is it? Tuesday. I thought it was Wednesday. I really did. I was about to say it's Wednesday. It is Tuesday night's late night agenda where Craig doesn't know what day of the week it is and is referring to himself in the third person. That's what kind of an asshole I am. So welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Lots to discuss tonight. I'm sure you're intrigued by the title. Don't worry. I will do my best to explain it to you. I just need to figure out what day of the week it is. We're going to talk about Arsenal. We're going to talk about Rodrigo. We're going to talk about Liverpool, MARC. We're going to speak about Antoine Semenyo. We're going to, of course, talk about Florian Wirtz and lots more. As we see here, Wales and Scotland doing really well in the World Cup qualifiers as well. So fingers crossed for both of those nations. Of course, my own beautiful little country's made it into the playoffs as well. So the best all around, really, isn't it? So look, let's get stuck into it. As always, appreciate your time tonight coming in and joining me. I know you have a lot going on, so you taking the time to come and have a chat with me means a lot. Where to start off tonight? Look, I'm going to hang off on the MARC stuff for a few minutes just because I don't want to annoy you by talking about it and then having to re-talk about it again in a few minutes when the chat starts to fill up. So let's fill you in with where we are on a couple of other bits and pieces. And one article that kind of caught my attention today was the Anfield Rap podcast. They had Dave Powell on, who was a football finance expert, often does stuff as well with the likes of the Echo. And there's an excerpt from that Dave O.C. Cop posted that I think is quite intriguing, and it's around the commercial side of Liverpool Football Club. Let me explain to you why I think this is interesting. So the quote from Dave Powell is, "Every other week there seems to be a commercial partnership being pulled out, but it's so important because other things will decline in the future, like broadcast revenue." Now that's the point I'm going to come back to in a second, because that's very interesting to me that he said that. So clubs will need to continue to pay big wages because Liverpool's wage bill, when the next accounts come out, is going to be about £400 million plus. It's a lot of money, and John W. Henry used to say to baseball fans at the Red Sox Winter Bowl, before he got heckled for it, that baseball players and football players are expensive and they're not going to get any cheaper. So we're going to see more and more of commercial deals happening. If we think last year commercial revenue was around £308 million, it's probably going to be close to 350 million this time. Now the part of this that really caught my eye is that Dave Powell reckons that broadcast revenue will decline in the future, which is not something that I've ever seen from my time watching football as an adult anyway. Television revenue seems to have just skyrocketed for football teams. So I wonder, is there something in the works where maybe they're going to move away from broadcasters? Are we going to see the Premier League in the future maybe go toward the streaming service? Or am I just reading way too much into this? Because that's what jumped off the page to me when I seen it at first, that football revenues from broadcasters are set to decline in the future. They've only been going one way in the last 10 years, and that's up and up and up. Right, Christina, how are we? Christina van der Merwe, nice to see you in as well. Appreciate you guys being here. Right, let's get stuck into some more news then. Ryan Gravenberch, some good news on this front, at least Nico Shearer believes so. So we said the other day that Ryan Gravenberch's getting closer to a Liverpool deal and a Liverpool contract extension. This piece here reckons that will be a long-term deal up until 2030 or 2031. A Saudi club had submitted a huge bid to sign him in the summer, but he turned it down to stay at the Reds. Of course he did. I mean, I never ever for 1 second would have believed that Ryan Gravenberch would have thought about going to the Saudi Pro League at this point in his career. He's got far too much to be achieving before that. So, but interesting to know that there was interest there with a huge sum of money waiting for him. But he wants to stay with the Reds. Of course he does. He's in the right place. Mo replacement should be Gustavo Mantuan from Zenit St. Petersburg. Yeah, I really don't think that that's going to be the case. I never even heard the dude's name, but that being said, well, there's other parts of that that make it very unrealistic to me, my man. Right, I want to get stuck into the Mo, I don't want to say replacement, but I want to get stuck into the future of Mohamed Salah, and a piece today from Football 365 that may give us an indication of how we are the front runners for Semenyo. So this piece here said that Arsenal have settled on a potential offer of about €60 million and €20 million in achievable bonuses for Real Madrid winger Rodrigo. Madrid manager Alonso is willing to accept such an approach as the Brazilian has not established himself as a starter this season. Rodrigo has only played 24% of the available minutes for Madrid and hardly featured during the Club World Cup. So the reason I bring this story up, because of course it's not a Liverpool story, is does that mean that we're going to get somewhat of a free run at Antoine Semenyo? You know, another report today suggests that Liverpool are the front runners for his signature. We know if the Reds want to sign him in January, it's going to cost £65 million if we're to trigger the release clause. The other side of it is, of course, if you wait till the summer, that release clause, according to David Ornstein and other reports yesterday, goes down in the summer. Also in the winter, there's a set period that you can trigger this clause in. You would imagine it's probably the start of the window. But this makes me feel like Liverpool are perhaps the front runners. Now, we did have this conversation, what happens if Arsenal come to the table? And that still is a very fair conversation. But you would imagine if Spurs, Manchester United, whose name has been mentioned as well, if they're in and around the mix, you'd have to say we'd be the front runners there, right? Arsenal, maybe pulling on his heartstrings, could be a problem for us. Spurs, United, you could easily say that we're the better footballing project at this time. And of course, we have Richard Hughes, which could be the ace up our sleeve in that one. So I'm growing in confidence around Antoine Semenyo. I just don't know when. You know, we were talking about on the podcast earlier on, and that episode will be out tonight, straight after this stream at 10:45. We were talking about it, and the lads seem to think it's more likely in the summer. I don't know how to feel about it. I think if our hand is forced, maybe we do it in January. If Spurs or somebody comes to the table like Luis Diaz, maybe the Reds go and get it done then and there. But I don't know. I don't know where I'm at with this one. I think if you wait till the summer, there's more of an opportunity for others to come in and maybe steal a march on us. So I would hope it's leaning to January. But I wanted to get your take on it. So let me ask that as the first poll question of tonight. And it is an if, because of course we're not guaranteed to be signing Semenyo. So, okay, 1 second. Right, so basically, if we sign Semenyo, when will it be? So I'm going to say January or the summer. January or summer. Right, so if we sign Antoine Semenyo, when will it be? January or the summer? Because, with all due respect to Mo, we need more life in the right wing sides at FC pitch side. Look, we keep having this conversation, and we always have to start from a place of respect. But I have to say, I think we need somebody now as well. Not just for the right side, although FC pitch side, like you've said, the right side could do with some attention. I just think we need another versatile forward that can play on either wing, that is direct, that is powerful. And if it's possible in January, you'd like to think we do it in January, because, you know, the greedy side of us as football fans thinks get them in now. The one that I'm more intrigued in for January, though, was MARC GUEHI. And again, I will come on to speak about my own bit of information on that, which I finally managed to get earlier on today. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Hopefully we've learned our lesson from missing out on GUEHI last minute in the summer, and we'll go for it in January with Semenyo. Don't wait too long. Said all in 6 million. I agree. Look, there's a whole host of reasons why I think trying to make that move in January makes sense. But if you're looking at it from a business perspective, if you are Liverpool and you think you'll win the race for Semenyo's signature, would it be tempting to wait till the summer when you know that, one, the clause is going to be active at a slightly less amount? So you could, I don't know what the number is. I haven't seen the number put out there anywhere for the summer. We know it's 65 million for January, but in the summertime, let's just say it's 55 million in the summertime. Does that mean Liverpool think that's 10 million quid? We sit on that. I would argue that we need to put our best foot forward for this season as well. And if we really do want to not just challenge for the Champions League, but try to get back up that league table as well, these are the type of moves I think that we should be doing. But I can't say with any level of certainty that I'm confident we do make a signing in January, because I've seen mixed reviews on this one, whether we do or don't. One story that I don't think you have to worry about is the Barcelona story. So there's Barcelona story about MARC GUEHI. They're saying they're monitoring the situation at Crystal Palace. Now, I don't think you've anything to worry about there. And this is where I'm leading myself on to the MARC GUEHI situation. So I'm always honest with you guys. And this is something, again, I'm going to come out and say, honestly, from what I've been told, I'm these are difficult conversations that we have behind the scenes. I said to Connor earlier on today, do we put our balls on the chopping block? Do we, say what we've been told today and in good faith and see how it works out? And ultimately, the answer to that is yes. I am going to say what I was told today because I think it's interesting and I want you to know. So the information that I've received today is that Liverpool are very, very confident that Mark Gay has given his word, and that he will become a Liverpool player. And this was pretty categorical, the person that said it to me. And the person that said it to me is the person that's given me correct information before. The person isn't inside Liverpool Football Club. I want to put that out there. But my information is that Mark Gay has given his word to join Liverpool Football Club and that he will be a Liverpool player. I don't know when. I know that's going to be the next question, and it's a very fair question, but I don't want to be misleading. I don't know when. I don't know if it'll be January, and I don't know if it'll be in the summer. I am still, of course, trying to find that out, but I don't want to mislead anybody by putting something out there that I know isn't genuine. I don't know the answer yet. I'm trying my best to get it, but it's made me feel very confident. So that's where I'm at with the Mark A situation. I told you all summer, honestly, I didn't know anything because I didn't. I tried to find out in the summer. I was getting nowhere. But now it feels like I'm happy enough to say that the word on the street is that Mark A has given his word that he will be joining Liverpool. And if you think about it, it all starts to add up a bit, right? If you look at the Real Madrid story, it's very similar to the Florian Wirtz situation with Manchester City and indeed with Real Madrid, where suddenly they're walking away because of wages. Suddenly they're walking away because the numbers don't really stack up. Whereas in truth, the reason that they weren't interested is because Wirtz had given his word to come to Liverpool and they knew that they were fighting a losing battle. So I think we're seeing the same thing here with Mark A, that these clubs know that yes, there is big sums of money involved, and yes, Liverpool will probably be paying a premium because he's going to be on a free contract if it's the summer. So that's where we're at. That's what I've been told, and that's what I'm willing to come and say publicly. As always, it's football, but I was excited by it, and I felt it only right to say it to you guys as well, because you're always very patient with me on these things, and that's where I'm at. So let me know your thoughts on it. And again, I don't know if it's January or the summer. I wish I did. I truly do, but I don't. Needs to be January for Liverpool and our defence at 60s red. Hayley Roberts, welcome into you as well. Craig, off topic a bit. Do you think our decline in form, especially our defence, is a consequence of Alisson being out of the team having an impact? Look, the answer in short is no, but I will say on top of that, Alisson not being there in any team in the world is going to have an impact. But I wouldn't put it down to it. I wouldn't say it's the biggest driving factor. I think the biggest driving factor is a couple of things. Of course, we still have to talk about Diogo Jota and the impact that's having because it is relevant. On top of that, I think you've got a lot of players still jostling for position. You've got some players being out of form a little bit. But I keep coming back to something I said at the end of last season about not being able to just switch it off and on when it comes to aggression, when it comes to giving that 100% out there on the pitch. It's easy when you're coasting to a league title, but we're back in a fight now, and we haven't really been able to flick that intensity switch back on to the same extent just yet. So yeah, all of these things count. Not having Alisson behind the defence, I'm sure that they're second guessing themselves. Not to undermine Georgi Mamardashvili, but he's not Alisson. You know, with Alisson, probably some of the goals we've conceded wouldn't have been conceded. That's, again, not meant disrespectfully to Georgie. It's just, I think, a fact. Alisson Becker is just something special. Like Thibaut Courtois. Like Manchester City's new goalkeeper, Gianluigi Donnarumma. They are just a physical presence. They are incredible shot stoppers, and they give the defence confidence. Liam Morton said, to be honest, Craig, I would much rather have Bastoni. In my opinion, he's a world-class centre-back, but Gay isn't just yet. So, look, I think a lot of us would probably agree with you on that, Liam, but what we don't know, mate, is if he's attainable or not. You know, we've been linked with Bastoni, and God, that's excited me. It really has. But sometimes, better the devil you know. And with Mark A, we know exactly what we're getting. We're getting a Premier League proven centre-back. We're getting now an established international. And most importantly, we're getting a leader. Now, I know Bastoni is probably a leader as well. But Mark A, he just ticks all the boxes outside of maybe the aerial ability. But let's not rule out more change at centre-back, is what I would say. So we had this conversation again today on the podcast about how the centre-back situation looks by the end of next summer. And honestly, my gut feeling, this isn't information, this is just my gut feeling, is that we see Joe Gomez leave in the summer. And if we see Joe Gomez leave, even if Canade stays, you could then make an argument that we need to go out and get an extra centre-back. But I'm intrigued by the system. If the system changes, then numerically you're going to need more centre-backs. So don't rule out Bastoni for the maybe medium term if Liverpool get any indication he's willing to move. But right now, the smart play seems to be Marc Guéhi, and I totally understand it. Wayne, how are we? I'm not trying to read Welsh, mate. I'm definitely not trying to read Welsh and butchering the beautiful language. Come on, Wales. WFM, Craig. Hope you and all the family are well. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the #1 Liverpool fan channel. We love that, mate. Thank you. Look, I'm delighted for Wales. Delighted for Scotland. I hope they both make it. We want as many of the home nations over there as we can. England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. I know Northern Ireland haven't made it, but do they have a route via the playoffs from the Nations League, or am I mixed up on that one? But yeah, delighted to see. Now, somebody just said a minute ago there was a penalty to Denmark, I think. So, yeah. And also with Marc Guéhi, it ticks the homegrown box as well. So that is something we have to keep an eye on. Because if you look at our squad this season, we haven't fulfilled the squad because there are still homegrown places that we could have brought somebody like Marc Guéhi in. You have to have, if my memory's right, 17 non-homegrown, but a maximum of 8 homegrown, or excuse me, a minimum of 8 homegrown if you want the full 25-man squad. Jason Curry said, Canade is gone. Liverpool will spend 220 million in January. I'm still unsure, mate, on Canade. I don't have anything on it. But as a fan, and again, we debated this on the podcast earlier on. I'm probably leaning more to thinking he's going to stay at this moment in time. But most of that is coming from his words recently where he said, I am happy. But the context of how he said it is something that I've been debating as well. He said something, and I'm paraphrasing somewhat, something along the lines of, the most important thing is that I am happy. Now, does he mean the most important thing is ... I am happy? Or the most important thing to me is that I'm happy? I don't know. There is a difference in those two things, and I don't know which way he meant it. But either way, I hope he signs. I know it's been rocky, but I've always said I want him to stay, rather than leave. But I do think, and this again is a question that I'd like to pose to the chat, if we sign Marc Guéhi in January, do you think he immediately comes in as the partner for Virgil van Dijk? Because Chris didn't. I can't remember how Connor answered it, to be honest with you, but Chris didn't. I think the only way you get him in January if he comes is to tell him, we need you. That's going to be your position alongside Van Dijk. Otherwise, I don't know how you sell it to him, because, of course, he's going to want to continue to play. He's going to make sure he's in Thomas Tuchel's, not just thinking, but is a nailed-on starter for Thomas Tuchel at the World Cup. He's going to want to be playing. And I think that's what we need to say. And also, I think it's probably the right thing, because Canade, even if he stays, and again, I hope he does, I've not been blown away by his form at all this season, and he almost needs a bit of a kick up the backside and a reminder that, you've got to be performing week in or week out to keep your spot. 60s Red said, if Canade goes, we need 3 centre-backs. I'm just trying to do some numbers in my head. I'd say 2 would be okay if Canade goes. But if he does, I'll be really interested to see what the club do. So let's say Canade decides, I'm not going to sign and I'm going to leave at the end of the season. I really would be interested to know what way the manager thinks then, because then you're looking at a situation where you've got a player who isn't going to be here at the end of the season. And again, we'll talk about full commitment and being professional and all this stuff. But like I said before, nobody's ever going to convince me that a player who knows his future is away from the club isn't going to somewhat switch off, even subconsciously. I just think it's impossible to stay at a peak level if you know your future's elsewhere, because you're going to be thinking, I don't want to pick up an injury. Then you're thinking World Cup on top of that as well. So yeah, if he doesn't sign a new deal, I think you have to go into the January market and bring somebody in. I think it's absolutely adamant that it has to happen at that, but I'd be absolutely adamant, excuse me. FC Pitchside said, if Canade is off, then we need at least 2 starters. I'd agree with that. I would agree with that, mate, yes. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Because you've got somebody, then you've got to come in and partner Virgil, and then you've got the competition. So, again, if people are coming in late and they're asking about the title of the stream or whatever, my information today has been that Mark Gay has given his word to join Liverpool. Don't know if it'll be January. Don't know if it'll be in the summer. Don't know. But, again, that's what I was told. And I've always told you, if I believe these things, I'm going to be upfront and tell you. If it doesn't happen, doesn't work out, as always, I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. It is football. But that's the information that I was given today. And it took me a long time to actually get anything, because I couldn't get it in the summer. Today, the person that gave me this information is somebody who has been right in the past with stuff that I've heard from them. It isn't from inside Liverpool Football Club. I've always said to you, I don't have contacts inside the football club, but I really hope this person is right. And it's not because I've put my balls on the line. It is what it is. And that one, I just, I really want this one to happen. I really want it to happen. Big J said, I need more info. Well, then go get it. You know, I'm not going to come on and lie to you. You know, I can tell you what I'm told. If you need more info, cool. That's sound. No disrespect taken from me. But, you know, all I can say is what I'm told. I'm not going to gloss it up. I'm not going to invent parts of it just to make it sound better. You know, that's what I've been told. That's my information. I wish I knew, but it would be January or the summer. But, yeah. Look, at this point, I hope that people have been watching the channel long enough that they'll know I'm not a yes, I know everything about everything type of guy. There are deals I know nothing about and I will never come on a bluff about. But when I do know something, I'm also not shy about saying it. And look at my track record. I hope I've earned at least the benefit of the doubt after the summer and other windows as well, where I've gotten far, far, far more right than wrong. So, let's wait and see. But, like, again, I don't take any disrespect. If anybody wants more info, I get it. I'd be questioning it in your shoes. I always say to you, question everything, doubt everything. So it's no problem whatsoever. Stevie boy, how are we, dude? Won 5 games in a row. There was no talk of Jota passing then as an issue. All of a sudden, start losing games. It's an issue. Let's address the problem, the manager. So, right, 2 parts to your comment. The first part, I get it. I do get it, mate. It's very difficult in my position because I have to, obviously, be fair. You know, the football fan in me feels very similar to you. I don't remember it being a burden at that point. It was more a motivational factor. So I get where you're coming from. When people start to use it as an excuse, it feels a bit lazy. But I also think there is something to it. It would, of course, still be on these guys' minds. But I totally understand where you're coming from because, honestly, I agree. It is an issue, but it shouldn't be an excuse. Nor should it be the reason for us winning the first 5 games. It's just a part of the overall situation at the club. And the second part, I disagree with you on. I don't think the problem is the manager. He is part of it. His stubbornness is added to the problem. But I've like I said the other day, I've accepted that this is going to be a somewhat transitional season with what we're seeing. And I'm willing to give the manager the benefit of the doubt to build this up. But the next 2 months, I'm going to need to see certain things from him. And we discussed this in detail on the podcast. I'm going to need to see that if we perform when Salah's at the AFCON, and if he finds a way to get these players playing and working, I'm going to need to see that he has the balls to not reintroduce him immediately when he comes back. Because if I'm a manager, and I often put myself into the manager's shoes to see and ask myself, how would I deal with this? And honestly, whether people agree with me on this or not, I've no problem with. But my take would be, if I'm Arna right now, I'm thinking, right, Mo's off to the AFCON. Wish he was staying, but I can't do anything other than change things now. He's going to the AFCON for that period of time. Here's my opportunity to start to mould this team around the Wirtzes, the Ekatikes, the Isaks. But also, if it works and the players are showing improvements and the results start to change, I think it's an opportunity for the manager to lay down a marker in the dressing room and stamp his authority and say, this is my team now. We're doing it my way. These are my players. Not saying that to be disrespectful to Mo, but it feels like a chance to get a big win for Arne Slot here and lay down a marker in the dressing room. Because I have doubts about the manager's ruthlessness, Stevie Boy, and I've said this for a while. Now, I don't know him, so those doubts could be absolutely unfair, but he doesn't come across to me as somebody who is going to be cutting in a way that Jurgen Klopp would have been. So I think this is a chance for the manager to lay down a marker and say, we've been winning when you're away. Convince me to play you back in. Convince me that you need to come back into this team. That's what I'd be doing in his shoes right now. Alex said our form won't suddenly change because of Salah's absence, lol. How do you know that? Lol. Mr. Smart Arse. Go on, do tell. How do you know our form won't change? Because I find it hilarious that you're so arrogant about it. Because I can't sit here and tell you one way or the other. But I certainly wouldn't be belittling somebody and going, lol, because they think our form might change. It's absolutely positive it might change. Or possible it might change. And let me spell out why. We're being plundered down our right-hand side. We're carrying a passenger who isn't defending on our right-hand side. And the gaps are there, and teams are exploiting them. Now, it isn't solely down to Mohamed Salah, but it certainly leans into it. Right? And last season feels like it was a unicorn season where he overachieved. This season and the end of last season, I am starting to feel like Father Time is catching up with him. And he is no longer the superhero that strikes as much fear into opponents as he once did. And I think his starting place should now come under question if others step up in his absence. That's the fairest I can be about it. But like I said, I've explained why I think it may improve. Of course, it might not improve. But to deny that the right-hand side is a problem for us, I think is just ignorant. Because it is a problem. The stats back it up. We're attacked down there 50% of the time compared to the other 2/3 of the pitch. It's no accident that teams are looking to get in and exploit that space. And of course, Trent leaving also plays into this. But we can't afford to carry a passenger defensively. And unfortunately, people will say, but last year. Last year feels now more like an exception to the rule rather than the rule. FC Pitchside said, not tracking back, losing so much balls. First touch got worse. He wants to take a defender, but he can't. And also, some selfishness has crept in. And if crept in my opinion, like I said yesterday, out of, is desperation the right word? Selfishness has crept in, but I think for the right reasons internally for him. Because I don't think he's making the best decisions for his teammates or the team, necessarily. But I understand that he wants to be the guy who rescues the situation. Because that has been his role for a very long time. And it's probably a natural feeling to him of like, give me the ball. I'll make it happen. Give me the ball. I'll sort this. But I just don't think that comes as easy to him anymore as it once did. That meme guy said, when Salah gets the ball in the middle of the field, he drastically slows down the attacking threat. Imagine if we had more pacey players on the right-hand side. It's not even the fact from a starting 11 perspective for me, and I've tried to say this for a while, we just don't have competition. And it's the same with Canade. If you don't have competition, I'm not saying it's going to lead to people becoming lackadaisical, But it certainly doesn't put a rocket up their backside, does it? It makes them feel like shit. X or Y is breathing down my neck and they want this starting place and the manager is surely going to give them a chance soon. There's nobody there to compete with them. So, again, to tie this all in a nice, neat bow, I really feel like I'm now looking at this AFCON as an opportunity rather than a negative. Whereas in other seasons, the conversation when AFCON comes around is, oh shit, he's going to the AFCON. We're in trouble. Hand on heart, I'd like to know, please do be honest with me, are you now looking at this AFCON and thinking there is an opportunity in this AFCON for us to figure it out? Or are you still in the same mindset that we would have all been in, which is, oh, we're losing Mo to the AFCON, this is going to be a problem? I don't have the same concern this time around. Paolo said we should just play him through the middle. So I've been an advocate for that, mate, for a long time. I have. But we've seen it once or twice, I think, but we've never really seen the manager commit to it. Yeah, so I agree with you in theory. I just don't think we've seen it. Cop Wolf Gaming said Chiesa is competition. Don't know what Slot has against the player that wants to play for us. So I agree and I agree. To you and me and any other Liverpool fan on the planet, we would absolutely be thinking that way, dude. But you're right also in what you say, and the manager seemingly doesn't. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about a potential bit of movement for Chiesa in a minute, but I agree with you. And it is the big question for me is why Arnott doesn't give him chances, why Arnott isn't playing him more. But I totally agree with you. He should be the competition. We think of him as the competition, but I don't think Arnott does. It's time for Mo to go and let the new era begin. So, how do I address this? I feel Mohamed Salah has earned the right to say when he leaves the club. But I also agree with you. I agree with you. But I do think it's his decision. You know, if he wants to stay and fight for a place, I think that's absolutely sound. You know, he's absolutely entitled to do that. He's got 18 months to go on his new deal. But I do think the conversation now is, it has to be, you are no longer the first name on the team sheet. You are, you know, you're there for us. You're an option. But I may have to alter things week on week and your game time may be reduced from what you're used to. I think that's the fairest way to talk about this. And it's difficult because you're torn. You're torn between your respect for the man, your appreciation for what he's done for our club, but also we don't have 2 years or 18 months to just tread water. If there is other avenues now and other opportunities for us to explore to build a team for the future, that's kind of been my theme for the last week. We need to look to that future. We need to look to your Wirtz, your Isaks, your Ekatikes, your Kirkes. We need to figure out a way for this to work because longer term, these are the guys who are going to be pushing the club forward. Stevie Boy said, who starts Frimpong, Chiesa and Mose at the AFCON? Neither. I'd be putting Gakpo or Ekitike wide. Or I'd be going with the front two and Wirtz in the hole behind. So yeah, neither for me on the right wing because I don't think either are likely. Chiesa, look, I would have there, no props. Absolutely no problem with that. But I feel, how do I say this? Every fibre of me feels that if Chiesa comes in and does well, it won't matter one jot. He'll still be dropped as soon as Salah comes back. So I'd almost prefer it to be somebody else, just so it really gives the manager a thought process and a decision to make. And I actually, at this point, think Semenyo could be possible in January, and I'm going to try and link that together in a minute. Jason Curry, look, Jason, I'm going to try to be respectful with this comment because you're trying to be respectful, but your first sentence is just silly, mate. You said people don't realise Salah is a legend. Of course they do. Every single person that watches this football club and supports Liverpool knows damn well what type of a legend Salah is. But what I don't want, mate, is to get into the point where we're making excuses for him just because he is a legend, and we're not addressing issues just because he is a legend. That's when it goes into the realm of it's causing damage for me. You also said we also don't have a proper right back. I disagree. I think Conor Bradley is a very, very good right back. We have a coach who doesn't get it. Well, he won the league and he's going to be here for the future. So I disagree on that as well. But like I said, we don't have to agree on everything, mate. Stevie Boy feels it's the coach as well. And I get it. Like, I can understand that. The only part I really strongly disagree with Jason is everybody does know he's a legend, mate. You know, because he is, right? He's a legend. But you've heard me use this phrase quite a bit. Football is a what have you done for me lately business. And, you know, ultimately, eating bread is soon forgotten. You know, I think that phrase is probably a fitting one right now because it's true. You know, the trophies for last year, the Premier League trophy, it's great, it's done, but it's also in the past. And we got to build to the future now. Right, so let me get some of this news together for you. One sec. Right, let me read out this news for you. I want to kind of tie a couple of things together. So let's start with the Chiesa story. So this coming from Napoli magazine, they say that Napoli want to ask Liverpool about the possibility of signing Federico Chiesa on loan with an option to buy in January. As of now, the Reds aren't against Chiesa's exit, but they want an obligation inserted into any loan. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is I think the only way that even begins to happen is if Liverpool sign Semenyo. You know, I could totally understand that they would want an obligation in there because, you know, look at what's happening with Elliott. Even though there is an obligation in there, but there's also a set amount of games he has to play. Also, of course, Chiesa will probably want to get back into the Italian fold. I know he turned down the call up from Gennaro Gattuso, but we don't know why he turned it down. So he's going to want game time. So I think there's, you know, stitching all this together in my head, if Liverpool are even considering that, and again, this is just a report, it's not a matter of fact, I think they'd only consider it if they feel they could go in there and bring in Semenyo in the January market, which we now know is possible for a set fee. One sec. Also, I want to bring in something that Robbie Fowler said. Two things that Robbie Fowler said. So, firstly, he believes that we need to replace Fabinho and try to bring in somebody of that ilk, a destroyer in midfield, which I don't disagree with. But he also goes to talk about wingers. And he does mention Antoine Semenyo, who Liverpool have been linked with. But he goes on to say, I saw Liverpool were linked with Bournemouth's Antoine Semenyo. Yakuba Minta has been very good for Brighton, and that's the beauty of the Premier League. If you've got a player who's playing well and performing, you're going to get linked with other clubs. Would Brighton want him to go? No. Bournemouth won't want Semenyo to leave, and Everton won't want Ndiaye to leave either. Salah's not going to be around forever, even though he's just signed a new contract. But if anyone who Liverpool think can fit that bill, they're going to try and sign them. And this is why, again, I think we're coming back to the Semenyo situation. What held me back from thinking it was possible was I didn't think that there was going to be a clause that was active in January. I thought it would have been next summer before that clause kicks in. So I'm excited and I'm nervous about it because it would be ideal if the manager moved Chiesa on and brought in Semenyo. Only because we know the manager doesn't fancy the idea of playing Chiesa all the time. You and I as fans do. But from the manager's perspective, I think it may look different. So for me, I just want players the manager looks at the bench or looks into the group and thinks that these guys can make a difference. We didn't have that last year with Chiesa and Elliott. Again, not our fan view, but from the manager. This season, we've got a similar situation, but it's with Chiesa and Rio and Gamoa, who are part of the six forwards, but aren't getting the game time compared to the other four forwards. Wow, Scotland have gone 2-1 up. Nice, nice. Gets in. Hopefully they can hang on. And that automatically qualifies Scotland, right? If they beat Denmark, they top that group. That would be incredible. What's the news on GUEHI? Go back over it for you in a minute, mate. I've covered it a couple of times already tonight, but don't worry, I will go back over it for you. I'm aware that people will be coming in a little bit late as well. So, I don't know what's going on here, but I don't like people turning on each other in the chat. So, Yeza or B4D. I don't know what's happened between you and Mark, but, you know, let's try to keep it respectful. Tanya, I said, I hope we win Saturday. I've got tickets. I hope we win Saturday as well, and I'm delighted that you're going to the game, but just from a, you know, a mental standpoint, I hope we win, because it's been a long time since that Man City game in my head. It seems like these international breaks feel never ending when you go into them on a loss. And I think Forest are there for the taking on Saturday, Tanya. So yeah, do let us know how you get on at the game. But I'm quite optimistic for this one. It does. Denmark only needs to draw some big goals. Nice. Delighted for it. Scotland fans deserve another World Cup. They deserve that trip. You know, they're not the Irish fans, you know. We are in a league of our own. But Scottish fans are great, and so are the Welsh. I hope as many of the home nations can get there as possible. Mark said, wow, GUEHI and Semenyo, I really do hope that the team gel. If and when they do, what a fucking team it'll be. Not 100% convinced on Mamadashvili. Nor am I. You know, I think that's a fair comment, because there's no denying Mamadashvili's potential. There's no denying his shot stopping ability. There's no denying his frame and his size. But what's tough for us fans is anybody who comes in after Alisson isn't going to be Alisson. So unless you are one of the top 3 keepers in the world, it's going to leave us in a very difficult mental place as Liverpool fans, because, you know, Arne came in after Jurgen and won the league, and yet still that wasn't enough for a lot of people, and there's still doubts about him. So yeah, it's going to take a while for me to mentally make that transition as well to Mamadashvili whenever Alisson does depart Liverpool, because to me, Alisson is like Mohamed Salah. He's a superhero, an absolute superhero. Oh, 2-2 in that game now. Ooh. Come on, Scotland. Are you worried about Isak? Maybe next season he starts firing. I'm worried about Isak, emotions in distress, mate, for the same reason I was worried about Isak in the summer. Is the fitness thing. That's it. And it's always going to be a concern. Even if he goes through, 4 months now without an injury, it's always at the back of my mind. But I want to go back to what I said in the summer. Signing Hugo Ekitike, in my mind, eases that fear somewhat, because it's not like we're without a bona fide centre forward if Isak's not available. But I would prefer both of them to be available and both of them to play. But that's the only concern I have. I've no concern that he'll work out or not, because he's an excellent footballer. But I think it's fair to be concerned about a player with a potential to miss some games through injury. Vert's just about to go insane in the league and do Vert's things. Watch this space. Well, on that, thank you for bringing up Vert's, because I want to read and I want to highlight one of the best social media posts that I've read in the last 10 years. And I mean that sincerely. This piece here from Bayern Space, I think, is absolutely fucking sublime. And it's only a couple of paragraphs. They write, in today's era, Florian Wirtz is the closest thing we have to Andreas Iniesta. Iniesta never needed numbers to prove he was the best midfielder alive. His football was the evidence, every touch its own argument. This generation is obsessed with goals and assists, drowning in goal and assist merchants, and somehow forgets what real midfield artistry actually looks like. That is sublime. And I agree with every goddamn word of it. Every word of it. It's true. I've said this so many times. I don't need Wirtz to score an assist to know he's a baller. I would like it, but it's not going to define him to me. I know what I'm looking at, and I can see improvement week in and week out. I can see a classy player, which is why I've been so adamant. I have no fears for Florian Wirtz at Liverpool. None. It's a matter of when and not if in my head. And fair play. That is a belter of a post, and I hope it hits home with some people, because it's one of the things that drives me mad right now is people are using metrics to belittle people as well as to overhype people. You either know a player or you don't. Looking at Florian Wirtz playing football, if you look at that kid with a football and don't see an absolute super talent, you don't get football. You don't understand football. That kid. Now look, I'm not trying to say he's lived up to everyone's expectations since he's come to Liverpool. But quite frankly, the agenda to try and undermine him is bullshit of the highest order. And I think people outside of Liverpool fans who are, of course, backing their boy, they need to take a long hard look at themselves, because this kid is going to be an asset to the Premier League, and he's going to be somebody who entertains us for years to come. He is an absolute baller of the highest order, and I love it. I love that post. Just joined, please read the post again. Oh, a pleasure, mate. I'd sit here and read this post all day, because I actually applauded the post when I read it in here on my own, and I genuinely applauded the post. In today's era, Florian Wirtz is the closest thing we have to Andreas Iniesta. Iniesta never needed numbers to prove that he was the best midfielder alive. His football was the evidence, every touch its own argument. This generation is obsessed with goals and assists, drowning in goal and assist merchants, and somehow forgets what real midfield artistry actually looks like. Perfection. Thiago, another example. David Woods, yes, another example. I didn't need to look at goals and assists. I just needed to look at that man with the football at his feet, and I knew. Great point. Thiago is another one of those. You just know that the dude has it. And that Bayern Space account in the summer came in for a bit of flack from Bayern fans, because they were saying things that the Bayern fans didn't want to hear, but turned out to be true about Vincent Kompany and when he met with Florian Wirtz, about some of the things behind the scenes. And they've been posting again today about Anthony, and that Bayern Munich wanted to bring in Anthony, and Anthony turned them down because he'd given his word to Real Betis. And I also went on to say that they were preparing Anthony because they knew that they were going to lose Michael Olise down the line. So I really think this account needs more credit than it's getting, because on its own that post is sensational, but they've got a lot right. A lot right. Thiago's passing range and accuracy was a thing of beauty, said Grandad's Slads. Just looking at him, mate. Just looking at him. Just the things the way he manipulates his body, the way he even passes the ball. You can see that futsal influence in Thiago's style of play. Sonder said Semenyo in, Gakpo out, Elise in as a Salah replacement. So I never understood this desire to remove Cody Gakpo. I don't get it. I do think he's somewhat limited in what he does, but I'm a very, very happy Liverpool fan that Cody Gakpo's in the squad. He always does numbers, and I know we're ironically talking about numbers not being the be-all and end-all, but what I mean by that is he chips in. You know, his numbers are always respectable. Yes, he's somewhat limited. He doesn't have the blistering pace as an example, but I've never gotten it. Some people just don't rate Gakpo at all, and I guess the question I would come down to for me is, if Cody Gakpo was the left winger for Liverpool for the next 5 years, would I be happy with that? And that's where I kind of come unstuck, because I do think there is room for somebody to compete with him and maybe even be the regular starting left winger. And Rio Engamoa isn't there yet because of his age. He'll be there in a year, 2 years' time. But the real problem is, do you block the pathway, or do you bite the bullet and bring in somebody like Semenyo? And the reason I think Semenyo makes sense is because he's so two-footed, and he can operate on either flank, and he can cause problems on either flank. He's pacey, he is powerful, he is direct. Yeah. So for me, he ticks a lot of boxes because he gives us Salah competition. He gives us options on the left-hand side. I think it makes sense. What's this one here? So, Team Talk have just said Liverpool are ahead in the race to sign Antoine Semenyo and are ready to meet his release clause of 65 million needed to prize him away from Bournemouth. I hope that's the case. There's been reports that there have been conversations. You would imagine if there are conversations, it's probably around the structure or the payment terms for that. Look, I can't sit here and tell you that he's going to sign in January, but I hope he does, because I think we need somebody right now, because we're lacking something up top. We're knitting in 2 new centre forwards, but we just don't have the fear factor even on the break anymore like we used to. I was sitting here the other day watching all of Salah's Liverpool goals on LFC TV. And by the way, wow. Firstly, wow, what a collection of goals. But one thing that stood out to me was some of the counter-attacking goals, the pace at which we attacked. And we just don't have that anymore, in my opinion. We have the technical ability, we have the fight, the desire, the heart, but I do think we're lacking a bit of pace. Pro, You Never Walk Alone said, how would you trim or manage our squad to become the best in the world? I don't think there's much trimming needs to be done. I think it depends on what the manager wants, and Arna seems to be somebody who wants that 20 to 22 man squad and not the full 25, which I think I disagree with. I get it in theory. You don't want to have players that aren't playing and aren't happy, but honestly, if you really want to win and compete across every competition, I think you need that full complement of 25, and I think you need players who can slot in and make a difference. And also, I really feel if you're winning, people don't mind. It's an easier conversation to have somebody on the bench if you're winning and they know, well, you're going to come in next week, mate. You're going to play. You might play 35, 40 games a season, but they're winning games and a winning team challenging for trophies. I think that makes a difference as well. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with it, but I just don't know. I don't know if it's going to be January or not with Semenyo. I hope it is. Arsenal are a great example of depth being good. So, yeah, look, I would say our starting 11 is better than Arsenal's, but I do think their depth is probably deeper than ours right now. If it feels more and more to me like we're having our Manchester City season that they had last season. I just hope our drop-off is nowhere near as far as theirs was. Because even in their poorest season last season, they managed to find their way to a cup final. So yeah, we need to do something this season, and I think Champions League's our best bet for it. Right, I want to get back in because people are coming in and asking about the MARC GUEHI stuff. Look, the information that I received today is that MARC GUEHI has given his word to Liverpool. I don't know when, whether it's January or the summer, but I believe the person that told me, because their hit rate with me has been very good and they've never steered me wrong. So I'm pretty relaxed now that we're getting MARC GUEHI. But I can't sit here and tell you when, because I'd be a liar. But that's the information that I have today. Kind of ironically, we debated this on the podcast, and I think the two boys feel it's more likely in the summer for MARC GUEHI than January. But I just think it would be madness if GUEHI is up for it. If he's willing to come in January, I think it has to be January. 3-2 Scotland. Nice. Get in. That's amazing. Couldn't be long left in that game either. Couldn't be long left. That's class. Delighted for the Scots. Gone full Ireland there, you know what I mean? That's class. Well done. Delighted for them. Mark said, my exact thoughts, Craig. I'm hoping for a Champions League this year. I think the league may have gone, unfortunately. I have no thoughts about winning the Premier League this year anymore. If we'd have beaten Manchester City, I would have thought, yes, we've the right to talk about the title race. But genuinely right now, I think Man City are going to win the league. Which feels counterintuitive because I should be saying Arsenal are going to win the league because they're top. They've been playing really good. But I think they're going to have a wobble. I think Gabriel being out is going to haunt them over the next month or so. And I think Manchester City smell blood in the water. And I feel like if they can keep Haaland fit, something tells me that they're going to pip Arsenal to the title. Now, I'd prefer Arsenal to win it from a footballing fan perspective. I have respect for Arsenal. But my gut feeling now is I think Manchester City are going to do it. Even though they've, 4 points to make up on Arsenal, I think they will. And I think when Arsenal have a wobble, City won't. They'll capitalise. They're used to this. And that pressure is going to mount on Arsenal. Because there's almost an expectation there now that they have to win the title. That they've spent so much, that they've built towards this, that they've been second 2 or 3 times. And the pressure's going to tell. In my opinion, the pressure's going to tell. And City are going to capitalise. That's just my feeling. But again, I'd prefer Arsenal to win the league over City. But I just think it's going to be City. Sonder said, post Salah, we are 100% going 4-4-2 with Wirtz on the left and Ekitike left striker to replicate Wirtz Voltmaler dynamic. Isak right striker with Elise Semenyo right wing. Just a problem of how we use it all now. I can understand where you're coming from. I would somewhat disagree on the system, but pedantically, I would say we're talking 4-3-1-2. But again, I think we're splitting hairs here. Either way, if we can get 2 centre forwards on the pitch together and working, happy days. So yeah, I slightly disagree, but I think we're on the same track. Right, let's check this poll. So, if we sign Semenyo, when will it be? 70% of you guys of over 1,500 votes. 70% of you think January. I love that optimism. I hope you're all right. Bobby said, I'm late, evening, you beauty, and everyone. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you being in. Hope you're well. There was something I wanted to say, actually. Can't remember. Must have been a lie. Hey, Michael said, hi, Craig. Hope you're well, mate. Speaking on Gakpo and his style of play, it's coach's job to improve a player, to make him better. So shouldn't Slot be teaching Gakpo to implement his new style in attack? Well, look, the club and Slot must be happy with Cody Gakpo because they rewarded him with a new contract in the summer. So you'd have to think that the club are fairly happy with what Cody Gakpo's doing. I think the problem for us comes that when we had Diaz, we had 2 different kinds of a left winger. And also both of them are versatile and could be played in other positions. Now, I think we're just lacking the cutting edge. Like, Gakpo is very good in certain types of games, in certain types of moments, but he doesn't have that Mane Diaz ability to just pull something insane out, whether it be, I don't know, a header out of nowhere or just something crazy that those guys could do. They could just force something to happen. I think we're lacking that dynamism. I've no doubt that Rio Ngamobo will provide that, but not yet. I think he's a little bit too young still. And I think it's unfair of anyone to expect it from him at 17 years of age either. What's this one? One sec. Wow, this piece here said Roma have already lost patience with Costas Tsimikas during his loan spell away from Liverpool, with manager Gian Gasparini not convinced at all. It is very likely that the defender returns to Anfield next season and will not sign permanently. That's interesting. Look, I've always said to you guys, I don't think Costas was ever going to be the long-term successor to Andy Robertson. I've never felt that way. I felt like he was. I feel like he's a poorer version of Frimpong, but on the left hand side, if that makes sense. Never really seen him as a left back. Always felt he was more of a wing back. But I'd put him as a lower tech version of Frimpong, if that makes sense. So I don't see him having a future at Liverpool long term. 4-2, yes, the Scotland. Go on. That's class. I'm delighted for them. Really, really delighted for them. Scottish people deserve that. They deserve this World Cup. Well done. Hopefully we can join you there. England there already. Scotland there already. You know, keep your fingers crossed for Wales and the Republic. Scotland scored a halfway line goal. Nice. Nice. My birthday is tomorrow, said Jakey Fitz. Happy birthday, Jake. Happy birthday. Hope you have a wonderful day, my man. Right, some more. Endo. Let's talk about Endo a little bit, because I was reading a piece on the Echo earlier on that it said Wataru Endo admits he's not satisfied with his recent lack of game time at Liverpool, having lost his starting place with Japan as a result. The midfielder was an unused substitute in Japan's 2-0 win over Ghana on Friday before returning to the starting 11 for a 3-0 win over Bolivia on Tuesday, just his second appearance for his country in this campaign. Goes on to say the 32-year-old has made 7 appearances for the Reds this season, but only 2 of them came as starts in the League Cup matches against Southampton and Crystal Palace. His 4 Premier League outings have amassed 36 minutes in total, half an hour of which came in the victory over Bournemouth. This is another one of those situations where we could upgrade. Let's be blunt about this. If there was a way to bring in another number 6 and to move Endo on, let's push aside the sentimentality and say that it would be the right thing to do. I admire Endo. I admire him greatly. I admire his attitude. I admire the fact that he understood and gets his role, and that he chose to stay, knowing he'd have limited game time. I respect a lot of that. But again, if we are starting to look to the future, to Arna's team, we know that that's not going to include Wataru in the long term. It isn't. So I think with a World Cup as well, he's probably going to want more game time, and there could be something there maybe in January to keep an eye on. Again, that's guesswork. Don't know. But if the player himself is now starting to say he's, you know, a little bit unhappy with the lack of game time because it's impacting his starting place with the Japan national team, you know, he's going to want to rectify that. Sonder said, how far can Norway go in the World Cup? Finally qualified. Never been there in my lifetime. Anyone got thoughts? Congrats on Ireland, Craigo. Mate, you are going to be a dark horse. Look at the group you won. If I'm right in saying that you were perfect, I think 8 wins from 8. Topped the group with Italy in it. Beat them, I think, home and away. You know, that deserves respect. So what I will say to you is nobody's going to want to draw Norway in the World Cup. You've got a very good squad. Obviously, everyone knows about Haaland and stuff, but there's some very, very good footballers in that Norwegian team. And yeah, I think if Haaland stays fit, they're going to be a problem in the World Cup. I don't think you're going to win it or anything now, but I remember our first World Cup, we got to the quarter-final. You know, we beat Romania on penalties in the last 16, got to the quarters, and lost to Italy 1-0. But I would say that that's absolutely achievable for Norway. Scotland are through 4-2. What a beautiful win. So happy for Robbo. Delighted for Robbo. Delighted for the Scottish people, just in general. Just, you know, sound people who like us Irish, I'm sure will celebrate it very well. But look, they deserve, the Tartan Army deserve another World Cup. And I know they've qualified for some Euros, but I can't remember when the last time Scotland qualified for the World Cup was. So yeah, this is going to be, they're going to make their presence felt, I'm sure, over in the States, Canada and Mexico. Emotions and distress said Endo and Shimikis are the cheap side of FSG. I think the Endo one I would put more down to Jurgen and George Schmadtke than FSG. But when we brought in Costas from Olympiacos, I do think it was a solid purchase for what we needed him for. To be a competitor, to be an option for Robertson, to be a backup left back. So I think he fulfilled that role somewhat. But now when we're looking past Andy Robertson and we've got Milos Kerkez in, that actually leads me to a poll question. 1 second. So I was reading a piece today about Robbo's future, and I just wonder what you guys think. So Andy Robertson's contract is up at the end of this season. Should Andy Robertson get a new deal? Now, before everybody replies yes immediately or no immediately, think about it. He knows Kerkez is going to be the future, but he's also showed that he's up for the fight this season. He could have gone in the summer, chose to stay, and right now, I think most of us would say he's the starting left back. You know, Kerkez will be the future. He'll get there. But right now, Andy Robertson would be on the team sheet for me before I'd put Milos Kerkez's name down. So I selfishly would love one more year. Whether you get him to sign a contract for 1 year or not, from a player's perspective, I could understand wanting more certainty on your future. But God, what a servant he's been. You know, whatever happens with Andy Robertson, one of the pound for pound biggest bargains of Liverpool's Premier League era, and an incredible servant to our club, an incredible human being, and a great role model for, you know, kids looking at footballers. He's the guy you should be looking at. You know, he's the don't give up, had no club at one point, wasn't working out for him, but kept doing the right things, kept believing in himself, and look at him now. Captain Scotland to a World Cup, you know, a huge part of Liverpool's success, smashing records as a fullback, just a great example. A. Michael said, if Liverpool can get Isak and Ekitike on the pitch together, they can form a formidable partnership like Cole and York for Man United. I hope so. Because the two I know the statistics showed them as being almost a model of each other, but I don't see that. I see differences in the way that they play. I think Ekitike is more dynamic. You could play him anywhere across the front three, or I think with Isak, yes, he could be the left side of an attack, but I think he's a bit more of a number 9, you know, through and through, than Ekitike, who kind of has that, dare I say it, Bobby Firmino streak in him. Tipperary said, I love your honesty. Sometimes I even hold back. You know, I'm always honest, but if you wanted me to be blunt about a lot of these situations, you know, my answers would be somewhat different. I'm fairly firm on certain things in my mind, and one of those things I'm now firm on is that Salah's best days are absolutely behind him. I take no pleasure in saying it, but I've taken quite a lot of time to think about this. And in the same way we've spoken about Liverpool not being on form this season, I don't think it's just been this season. And I think Salah ended last season in a way that wasn't as impactful as the mid-season and start of season form. Not unusual for him. But what we didn't get this year is what we usually get from him, which is a lightning quick start to the campaign, where he's ratcheting up goals. And I know you can say Craig is still our top goal scorer, but again, I know I'm not seeing the same player. And for the first time now, I do feel like Father Time is catching up on him. And I do feel like he's lost a step. And I do feel like while he can be impactful, he's just not the same force he once was. And I don't know. I just don't think he should be a nailed-on starter anymore going forward. I just don't. I think he has a role to play, but I also don't know if he'd accept a bit part role, being the guy that he is. You know, having the belief he does. I don't think the idea of a hybrid of Salah not playing every week or every game is really feasible, because I don't think his own ego isn't the right word, but his own inner belief would allow that. So I'm wondering if we're going to see a black or white situation here, whereas he either stays and he's playing all the time or he goes. I don't really see a middle ground for somebody like Salah, because I've no doubt when he puts on his boots every morning, he still feels like he can do it, and he believes that he can do it. You don't get to where you are without having that inner belief. But I think now anybody who thinks we're going to see prime Salah again, I think is mistaken. So yeah, that's where I'm honestly at. And with Canade, I feel like he should be the first reserve of a centre back at Liverpool Football Club based off what we're seeing. I had a conversation today with Chris and Connor, and I asked if Mark Gay comes in January, is he going to be an immediate partner for Virgil? And they said, Chris said he doesn't think so, and I just couldn't see it any other way. I don't even think it's a debate. We asked the question that somebody asked us the other day here. If somebody, let's say Saudi, came in with £100 million offer in January for Mohamed Salah, would you take it? Not only would I take it, I'd bite your hand off at this point, because I have a gut feeling this is going to get a bit toxic. Yeah, I do. I have a gut feeling this is going to get a bit toxic. And I can... Yeah, I don't know how other to word that, but I do feel this is going to get a bit snarky behind the scenes. That's my gut feeling. I'm sorry to say it like that, but when you've got a Ronaldo, a Salah, a Messi, not being a guaranteed starter isn't going to go down well. It's just not. So somebody has to make the decision for him, in my opinion. And I don't know if Arna has the ruthlessness to make that decision. So I said that the AFCON's going to be very interesting, because I do feel we'll look better when he's not here. And again, feel shitty saying that, but I do feel we're going to look more solid as a unit when he's not here. Maybe we don't score as many goals, but I would argue we won't concede as many goals. And then I want to see a manager who, if he can get this team firing, make that big call and say, it's best for the group, it's best for the team, it's best for the club if we go with what's working and look to the future. It's really, it's difficult. It's difficult, but that's what I think needs to happen. I seen a comment in the chat saying he deserves proper send-off. Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with you. But I don't think he's going to be here by the end of next summer, is what I'm kind of getting to here. And I think it'll be on his terms. And I think it should be on his terms. I think he's earned the right to say how his Liverpool career finishes. But for the first time ever now, I think, yeah, he might not be here past next summer. Because if we bring in Semenyo, as an example, if we bring in Semenyo in January, and you've got Semenyo, you've got Isak, you've got Ekitike, you've got Gakpo, you've got Rio Engamoa, Fede. I mean, be honest about it. Is he a guaranteed starter there? Not what we're seeing now. Yeah, that's where I'm at. If Semenyo comes in, I think my front three starts to look very different. Craig Ferguson knew when the time was right to move players on, and that's why United were so successful. The time comes for every player. Salah's best days are behind him. Love Mo, but it's time. I kind of feel like I agree. Because even if he scores 15 more goals this season, I still don't think he's the same player. And I don't think we're ever going to get that back. Yeah. It's a difficult one. Because, I and many others spent last season saying, give him his new deal, he's earned his new deal. But let's be honest and say there's been a drop-off since that in the output, in the body language, in all of it. There's been a drop-off. And it's fairly sustained now. And if you took away penalties and stuff like that, I don't know. I just don't think he's going to be getting much better, unfortunately. Wesley said, I love Salah here at Charlotte FC next year. I don't think they could afford him, to be honest, Wesley. So what do you guys think? I mean, I've been as honest as I can about the Salah situation. Somebody's asking about MARC. Give me 2 minutes, bro, and I'll get back to that situation for you. But I want to know how you guys feel about Salah. So while you're typing that out or having to think about it, I'll address what the gentleman asked for about MARC. So the information that I received today was that MARC has given his word to Liverpool that he will join Liverpool. I can't tell you when it'll be because I don't know. But that's the information that I got today. And when I got it, I started thinking backwards from there. And, there was a report during the week about Real Madrid using his wages as a reason why they're backing away. I don't believe that to be the case. I said at the time that I didn't believe that to be the case. And I wondered, was it because they knew MARC was going to Liverpool? And I think that's where we're at. I hope it's January, but I couldn't tell you one way or the other because I really don't know. But that's the information on MARC. I, for the first time, had somebody say to me that they believe that he's given his word that he's going to come to Liverpool. Right, let's keep going. Semenyo has 6 goals in 11 games. I don't know what you mean by that, though, Paul. I don't know if you mean that as a good or a bad thing, because 6 goals in 11 games is a good return, but it's also in a team where he's the big fish. So that thing Sam Maguire wrote the other day, I just can't shake it out of my head. And Sam basically said something like he doesn't like buying a forward who are running hot. And I can totally understand where he's coming from. Because the question you got to ask yourself is what we're seeing from Antoine Semenyo the new normal for him? Or is it a purple patch? Now, I'm sure that they will have the data to give them more insight than we have. But even if it is a purple patch, I think the price point at 65 million is very reasonable. Because we talked about 70 million being a possibility over the last few weeks before David Ornstein broke the news about the release clause. 65 million to me in January seems pretty reasonable for what players are going for in this day and age. It's a great opportunity when Salah goes to the AFCON. We can experiment, and I feel it will be for the better, said Manj Nagra. I really don't want him to leave, but I know it's probably for the best, said Ben. Salah has more goals and assists this season for a club and country than Mbuemo. Play devil's advocate. Yeah, but United are shite. But Mo needs to reinvent a new style, as most players and coaches know all of this moves by now. It's not unusual. We've talked about this before about a Ronaldo or a Messi reinventing themselves somewhat, but we're not even seeing that there's a thought process in the club to reinvent them. It's still he's right wing, he's right wing. That seems to be the thought process. Let's be honest here. Why are we resigning? Re-signing? Is that what you mean? Canade, but not getting away from what he's done. But you don't think we can get somebody far better than him? So I said umpteen times, and I'll say again, MARC GUEHI starts as soon as he walks in the door for me. And I think if you're looking at the Canade situation, I think the easiest way to summarise it is kind of what Cara said. You're happy if he stays, but you're not going to lose any sleep if he goes. And I think that's probably spot on. Canade, I want him to stay because, he's part of our squad. I don't think he's been on his best this year. But ultimately, if we add in more competition around him, I think he'll get better. But I agree. We can improve there, and I think MARC GUEHI would be an improvement there. Duncan said, don't want Chiesa to leave. He could be world class for us. He is world class, just that Slot can't or won't see it. That's the biggest frustration of it all, isn't it? Because I think fans have made their thoughts on Chiesa pretty clear. All of us love him and want him to get more chances. He isn't getting those chances. And my gut feeling would be, even if he took the opportunities when Salah's at the AFCON, I still think Salah walks straight back in as soon as he comes back, despite what Chiesa does, because I just don't think Arne wants Chiesa here. And I don't think that that's an outlandish thing to say based off the lack of game time he's gotten in the 2 years since the manager, or the year and a half since the manager's come in. Andy Robertson, speaking about qualifying for the World Cup, by the way, said, I couldn't get my mate Diogo Jota out of my head today. We've always discussed going to this World Cup, and I know he'll be looking somewhere smiling at me. Yeah, it must be very mixed emotions, of course, for Robbo there at the minute. Proud man, captain in his country to a World Cup. But, as he said, his best mate, from a footballing perspective, is not there. And they would have both been celebrating their passages to the World Cup. Yeah. It's must be a tough evening for Robbo wrestling with that, but I'm sure he knows Diogo would be delighted for him and for the Scottish people as well that they are going to that World Cup, because he deserves it. He deserves to go there, Robbo. He's as do the Scottish team and the Scottish fans as well. It's going to be brilliant to see them at the World Cup. I just hope Ireland can join them. Copwolf Gaming said, should Salah leave a legend or stay as a footnote career-wise if his form continues? In my opinion, I just don't think he's the same since Jota. I think he's leaving a legend either way, but I totally do get the point you're trying to make. It's that, leave them wanting more kind of feeling, isn't it? You don't want to be the guy hanging around past your best before and people just constantly talking about what you used to do in the past and stuff like that. So I get it. And I just feel like this is the toughest conversation we can have as fans about a player. Because, like I said, I feel like he's past his best now. And I feel like if we're being honest with ourselves and removing the emotion from it, I think it's clear. But I take no pleasure in saying it, because I don't want it to be clear and I don't want it to be the case. But we're lacking. We're lacking up top. We've got an Isak who hasn't settled in yet. An Ekitike who's done very well. We've got two players the manager doesn't really think are ready for the here and now for various reasons. And then we've got Salah, who is not at the level we know he was. That's a problem. Whatever way you dress it up, that's a problem, because we don't have enough firepower to cover us. We just don't. So we're asking on the Robbo question, should Robbo get a new deal? If you haven't voted on it, please do. Be lovely to get your thoughts. Craig, that just proves Diogo's at the front of their minds. Robbo just said it. Of course, I never for 1 second believed that Diogo wouldn't have been at the forefront of their thinking, but you know what Stevie Boy said earlier on, I kind of understand as well. It went from a situation where we won 5 games and the narrative was, let's do it to honour Diogo, let's do it in memory of Diogo, to it's a ready-made excuse when we lose some games. And look, I know the players wouldn't want to say that or use it as an excuse. They're professionals. And it should become part of the thinking, but you know, if we were going to go into this season feeling like we're going to feel sorry for ourselves and use it as an excuse, we're giving away the season before it starts. So you'd hope the inspirational part is what you'd be looking to do. You know, let's do something special for Diogo, which I'm sure is the narrative in the dressing room. Upper Meccano was not good, same as Canade. I agree. I said multiple times, I think we got the better centre-back when Leipzig were moving on their centre-backs. I still to this day agree that Canade is better than Upper Meccano. The Mail are saying United are going in for Gay. Yeah, I mean, enough said there. An interesting thing today came out from Sportico. You may have seen this in our WhatsApp, but it's the 100 most valuable sports teams. And you have to go to... Where are we? You have to go down to number 22 before you see a football club there. So the 100 most valuable sports teams are dominated by American sports teams. Cowboys won. I think, I don't know my logos too much. I think the Golden State Warriors there, number 2. The Rams 3rd. The Giants 4th. Lakers 5th. You've got all the way down to 22 before Real Madrid appear as the most valuable football team. Next on the list from a football perspective, Manchester United, number 35. Then you go to Barcelona, then Liverpool, Bayern Munich, Manchester City, 55 and 56. Where are Arsenal? I've seen their name on this list somewhere. Arsenal, number 67. It's truly astounding to me, by the way, that American football and American sports teams are the most valuable in the world. I would have thought football clubs' value would have been higher because it's watched more around the world, football, than American football. It's crazy to me that, that those American teams are the most valuable. And so far, like that, as I said, you have to go all the way down to number 22 before you get to a Real Madrid. Sonder said, Slot's Dutch accent, we need 20 players, no more or less, but doesn't use Endo, Chiesa, Rio and Gamoa. It makes me wonder why we didn't sign more players. Yeah, I don't like what he said either. I don't like this, we need 20 players, no more, no less stuff, because that's, you know, you've got a chance to have 25. You know, why wouldn't you want more options? I know the answer would be because you want to keep people happy, but I would argue again, winning keeps people happy. Collecting medals and trophies keeps people happy, even if maybe they're getting 10 or 15 games a season less over a 60-game season. And I keep coming back to the narrative in the summer, which was the club were building out the squad to challenge in every competition and not have another Plymouth Argyle situation. And here we were, League Cup, first opportunity to have an excuse, and straight away, that was the excuse. Oh, well, we have to rotate and rest. Which one is it? Are we making excuses, or are we, you know, happy with the business we've done? Because if we're into the making excuses part again, then we need more players. Out of the 20, he only trusts 15. So I kind of agree. You know, like, I think the easiest way to summarise it is the attacking 6. Whatever else we say, we have 6 on paper, but 4 in reality. That's the thing that pisses me off the most. Because if you watch my streams, I've said so many times, repeatedly, I don't want to see a situation where Arne looks at the bench and doesn't believe what he's looking at and doesn't believe in the players there, and that we're going into games and we have a bench that's got spaces on it that are wasted. And we're seeing that. We're seeing wasted spaces. Why the fuck have we 3 goalkeepers in a team at one point and 2 on the bench? Like, that's a piss take. We've played a game this season where the away team had more people in the squad than we had. And it does my nut in that Arne is looking at a bench again and not utilising 2 players from a 6 forwards. It's just not good enough. And it's undermining the group. That's one thing I can't get my head around. Last year it was Chiesa and Elliott. This year it's Rio and Chiesa. They're either part of the team or they're not. And if they're not getting minutes, then don't try and tell us they're part of the group. Tell us we've got 4 forwards and that's the end of it, because it's just undermining ourselves. LFC Spectre said, it feels like the squad of last season was more competitive and deep enough than this season's squad. It doesn't feel like we built out the team as much as maybe through necessity had to rejig the attack and upgraded an Elliott to a Wirtz. But we still haven't got the depth. I think I can count on one hand the amount of conversations we had in pre-match chats where we've talked about a stacked bench or thought, ooh, look at this. Doesn't that look great? We've had loads of conversations where we've like, shit, what are we going to do here? What's the changes? Who do you bring in? And I know that there are players who are close, like a Nioni, a Rio and Gamoa. But I don't like writing off seasons. And whatever Arne says about blocking the pathway for Rio, well, we're screwing ourselves by not having any competition for Gakpo on the left. And it's costing us. Same on the right. It's costing us. Ronnie Buckingham said, I love Mo and have a bronze cast Mo statue, but maybe it's time to think about rotating more. I agree, man. I agree. Here's how I think this goes. If we bring in Semenyo in January. I'm just having a guess. So if we sign Semenyo in January, this is what I think happens. We do perform better when he's at the AFCON, and we do find a system. I then think he comes back and his minutes are going to be more limited. And I think then it becomes a problem. Then you see more media talk, more Rami Abbasisa stuff, more snidiness. And it starts to become an uncomfortable conversation. And I don't want that to happen, but I really feel that's the direction this is going to go in. Or the manager just bows down and just keeps playing Mo, come what may. But if he does that, I would argue that he's not the right man for the situation, because you need to be ballsy and make these big calls. And if we look better without any player, Mo in this scenario, because he's going to the AFCON, it would be counterintuitive and counterproductive to replace the successful players with somebody who has a big reputation. Kev Parker said, Craig, I understand that Rio isn't as good as Jamal, but can't we keep saying should be played more because he's 17? But whatever you or I say, Kev, the fact of the matter is that he's not a contender to start every week. Whether you or I disagree with it, you know, the manager's showing us that he doesn't think he's ready to play every week, because even in games, sometimes when we're chasing it, he won't bring him on. He won't start him. So it's very clear that Chiesa and Rio and Gamoa are not players the manager thinks that he can play, or aren't real competition. And the only reason for Rio is, of course, his age. So again, you and I might think, give him a go. Because look, God, I've seen clips of him even today playing for the England under 19s or 21s, and he was doing magic stuff down the sideline, leaving people for dust. But the manager doesn't feel he's ready yet, even though publicly we're being told that these are our forward options. The real world impact of it is, no, they're not. The hopeful guy said Diaz was 100% worth the increase in wages. And I don't know anybody who would disagree with you. But it always felt like the club were unwilling to do it. I don't know why. Maybe Diaz wanted to move. I really don't know. But it always felt like he wasn't going to get that pay increase. And I'm going back a year even thinking about this. All of us would agree he deserved a pay rise. Of course. And you would have to say, if you look at it right now, he's kind of proven his point, isn't he? Over in Bayern. He's hit the ground running and shown what a good player he is. Mello Brown said Arne needs to change the way he's thinking with the squad size and selection. He risks players getting burnt out and players losing confidence by not playing. Big love. So one of the whole things about Arne's philosophy is to keep players fit. But in a world where, and I know we didn't participate in this, but the Club World Cup, straight into the season, straight into a World Cup, some of the keeping players fit is kind of going to be out of his hands to some extent, because there's only so much he can do as a club manager to keep any of these guys available and fit. Between their international commitments and the increased amount of football they're going to play, injuries are going to become a bit more prevalent. And surely they have to know this. They have to. They're data driven. They have to know this. And if they know that, then it kind of feels counterintuitive to be working with a smaller squad, because then you're at the risk of, well, we need to stay injury free, but then when you do pick up injuries, you're up shit creek. So, for some people that are data driven as much as they are, you'd have to feel like the sensible play would be to have more bodies and, increase competition and rotate more. And in theory, that should hopefully take the pressure off some of these guys as well. But to have a small squad, I don't think you get to moan about injuries as a manager if you're intentionally going with a smaller squad. When injuries come, tough shit. That's what you wanted. And you talked about wanting to keep people fit. This is modern football. I just don't think it's possible. Kev said LFC are shooting themselves in the foot by not keeping Diaz and not having faith in their own squad. There must have been a meeting at the start of the season who Slot wanted to keep. No idea. Haven't got a clue, mate. I remember even last season saying it's very unlikely Diaz is going to get a new deal. It just always felt like he was going to leave at some point because he wasn't going to get that new deal. But we don't know the ins and outs of it. We don't know what was driving it. We don't know what was said. We don't know what he was asking for. We don't know any of it. But it always felt like there was an unwillingness, because even when it was around his wages, the club kind of briefed that he was on more than the public think. And that almost felt in itself an admission that there wasn't going to be another pay increase. To me, that's how I looked at it. If Klopp was in charge, what do you think he would have done with Salah's situation? Exactly the same as Arne, as in nothing. But I felt there would be more of an opportunity to reinvent Mo under Jurgen. Because if you look at Jurgen, he often spoke about the importance of experience and leadership in the dressing room. He fought for James Milner to get a new deal. Jordan Henderson. He valued that experience in the group. So I think Mo would have kept playing, but I think in a different way under Jurgen. I think Jurgen would have been insistent on Mo being here still, but not. I don't think he'd be a wide right player. I think he'd find a way, whether it's as a second striker or something different, to make the adjustment that we're not seeing Arne doing. Do you think Arsenal will wobble now, Gabrielle? Yeah, I said earlier on, Damon, I think City win the league. I want Arsenal to win it over City as a football fan who cares about right and wrong. I want Liverpool to win it over all of them, obviously, but like I've said, I'm not going to backtrack on this. I think it's better for football if Arsenal win it over City because, the 115 odd charges. But I feel like the first time City sense they're going to pounce, and I just feel like they're getting their mojo back now. And they had their season of transition, and now they look like they're figuring it out. Do you think we made a mistake by not accepting 150 million for Salah a few years ago? So, no, I don't. I said at the time, don't take the money, and I still think don't take the money back then. But now, it would be very different. We started off the stream where we spoke about that hypothetical question of, if they offered 100 million for Salah now, would you take it? And I said, not only would I take it, I'd bite your hand off for it now, because I think it would relieve some uncomfortable conversations, and it would inject some money into bringing in a player in a position that we need at the very least competition in. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I take it. I take it tomorrow. But no, I'm not going to change my mind on the 150 million back then, because let's look at last season. You know, would we have won the league last season without Mo? No, is the short answer. We wouldn't. So, yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with saying I'd have rejected that 150 million still, like I said at the time. But right now, for the first time, I would say, yeah, take that money. Do you think Arne Slot should be sacked? No, I don't. I was close. I was doubting. But the Aston Villa and the Real Madrid game showed me that at the very least the players haven't thrown the towel in for him, and that's what it would take for me, for a manager to lose his job. It would have to be pretty clear that the players just aren't responding to the manager's words anymore, and I haven't seen that yet. On the whole Salah thing, though, just again to reiterate, I do think whatever happens, it should be on, it's Mo's decision. I want to say that I think his time as a starter should be coming to an end as a guarantee, but I do think whatever way Mohamed Salah's Liverpool career ends, it's his choice. He's earned the right to dictate it on his terms. If he's willing to fight for his place and accept that he might not be a guaranteed starter, cool, no props. Yeah, he's earned that right to call time on his Liverpool career on his terms, but I just don't want it to get to a point where the manager takes it out of his hands and it gets a bit messy behind the scenes. Knowing what we know now, would you still have offered Salah a new deal at the end of last year? Oh, see, that's... No, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't. He earned it. There's no denying that. But if I'd have known that was probably the last hurrah, let's say, at the very pinnacle of his powers, I don't see how the answer couldn't be no now. Because he isn't showing to be the same impactful player. And at the wage level you're talking about, no, I wouldn't. And shit, that's hard to say. Because I agree with everyone who said he earned it as well. I was fighting for him like everybody else to get that new deal last year. But your question was a hindsight one, where if we knew what we know, what we're seeing now, would I have given him the contract? No, I wouldn't have. But we did know that. And I still think we all did the right thing at the time. Because as so many people pointed out, he earned it. He was the superstar that helped deliver us another league title, and was a huge difference maker. So every penny of it was earned. But I'm being honest, if I see what we're seeing now, at that time, and it was an indication that maybe, Father Time is catching up with him a bit, I wouldn't have. What about you, though? You guys say, would you have given him the new deal? If, you're seeing what you see now, last season, would you have given him the new deal? I think I've done that one. Yeah, I have. Bradley said no regrets with the new deal. 400k a week. Wow, said David Woods. For money, wages, Salah is definitely not worth it now by a mile, said Kev Parker. I'd bring back Elliott, said Nick. Well, it looks like that could be a potential option, Nick, in January. Ross Cronin said, I think it's a deal that means we can get a fee for Salah at the end of the season. So I still feel that everybody's belief when that deal was signed was that he's seen out to 2 years. And I think Liverpool will be true to that. I think, like I said, I think it comes down to Mohamed Salah and what he wants to do. Because Liverpool won't force a sale for him. They just won't. They'd be far too respectful, and rightly so. But also, I wonder if Mohamed Salah was tempted by something, would it change? Badruddin said, definitely given the deal. I think Salah would be performing better now if we hadn't sold too many players in the summer. But did we really sell too many? You know, I don't agree with that narrative either. Some of these positions are undeniable that we needed. We needed 2 centre forwards because of the tragedy for Diogo and because Darwin wasn't good enough. That's clear. I don't think anybody can debate that. On the left side, we sold Diaz and replaced with nobody. That's completely fair to point out. At right-hand side, Trent went. So that was something the club couldn't solve or couldn't figure out. And they brought in Frimpong and Bradley was given a new deal. So the only real conversation is at left-back, really, where we're all screaming for another left-back last year. But Milos Kerkez hasn't hit the ground running yet. So again, I think the business that was done is absolutely understandable. We're just not getting to where we want to be yet. But I do think we will. What's up, Craig? You seem down today. You're very fucking observant. I'll give you that one. I'm not in a great place at the minute, but that's my own issues. And I hate talking about these type of things with Salah and stuff because I'm always going to be honest. But when I say these things with a heavy heart, I mean it. Like it pains me to say that I have doubts about Salah. I don't like saying it because, you know, he's given so much to our club. He's delivered us so many moments. He's a wonderful fella. He's a joy to have as an ambassador for the club. I couldn't think more highly of him. But I also know that sport's ruthless. And I hate doubting him. Yeah. That's genuine. I know people, and does me bicky in that people think I have something against Salah whenever I say anything critical, same as any other player, but they couldn't be more wrong. I love the man. But I truly feel like he's on a decline and it's becoming a problem and an issue. A. Michael said, at the end of the day, let's see the year out and see where Salah is. He could go to the AFCON and come back and turn it around and become the superstar again. Yeah, he could do. Yeah, he could do. Just having a lot of doubts about myself at the minute, to be honest, folks. Not really going to get into it at this point of the stream, like, but yeah, I'm just I don't know. I'm just having some doubts about me and the channel and the future, and yeah. We sold Trent, Kelleher, Costas, Kwanzaa, Morton, Diaz, Nunes, Harvey, Doak, McConnell, Yaros and Kumas. And of those players, is there anyone there we don't really understand them selling? Because I've got to say, looking back at it, I don't really think too many of those are shocking sales, outside of course, the tragedy with Diogo, which none of us could have really seen. yeah, I don't think any of those were players that I have regrets about. Harvey Elliott, I understood because of his desire to get more game time, and it totally got that. But that aside, Diaz, probably the only one. Yeah. So look, I'm gonna say goodnight for now. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Appreciate you all coming in and joining me again tonight. The podcast will be out in about 7 or 8 minutes. So hope you enjoy it. If you do, please give it a watch. Let me know your thoughts. We discuss everything you would expect us to discuss: the next 5 fixtures, the situation with Salah, Canade, MARC. Yeah, appreciate your support as always, and we'll see you tomorrow.